I love my wife, and I would never do anything or say anything to ridicule or make fun of her, not in any real way. So know that it is with love in my heart that I share this with you. My wife reads all the time. She reads all the time. If we're on the couch watching a TV show and there's a commercial, she will start reading. She will pick up her book and disappear into it. Because that 3 minutes she could spend getting through another 10 pages. So she's gotten back into some of like her older fantasy stuff that she hasn't been into in a while. She spent a lot of time, she caught up on all the Sookie Stackhouse novels that's what was turned into True Blood on HBO. She read the Hunger Games books. She even read all the Twilight books, even though she doesn't really care about them. She saw the first movie and was like, yeah, I don't need to see the rest of those. But she read the books. But so I got used to her like reading that kind of stuff, more modern, like what is acceptable in the realm of fantasy now. Like, it's pop fantasy. So when I saw the other day, she was holding this book, and she was holding it so that I couldn't even see the cover. Like, she was deliberately holding the cover away from me, and I was like, what are you reading? She was like, nothing. It's called Cushiel's Chosen, and the reason she was hiding it from me is because it looks like a freaking Harlequin novel. This is the second book. The first book, I think, is called Cushiel's Dart or something. And it is like hardcore fantasy, man. Morning broke, chill and misty. The tribute ship was fog-wreathed in the harbor. What in the world does fog-wreathed mean? Fog-wreathed. Anyway. And she's like, do you hate me for reading hardcore fantasy? And I was like, no, of course not. I wish I had more time to read, and maybe if I did, I would read this crazy, crazy stuff that you read. Because the extent of my fantasy is like, I mentioned early in another vlog, or response, I mentioned in response to Earhart that I've read Wicked, like Gregory Maguire's spin-off of The Wizard of Oz. I've read His Dark Materials, the trilogy by Philip Pullman that starts with The Golden Compass. I love those. Movie was... there is one trilogy that Alicia has recommended to me called the Second Sons trilogy by Jennifer... Wait. Second Sons trilogy by... what's your name? Jennifer something or other. Jennifer Fallon. There we go. I will link it in the info. That is, it looks like a fantasy book. I mean, it doesn't have a Harlequin novel cover. It actually just has, like, words. It's just words on the cover. It looks like fantasy. It feels like fantasy, but once you've finished the entire series, you can safely say that there's absolutely nothing fantasy about it. It takes place on a world that seems very much like ours, but it's not ours. There's no magic, there's no dragons, there's no dwarves or orcs or anything, it's just people. But it's obviously not our world. Like, there are too many things that are different about it that it's obviously not our world. And it's mostly a geopolitical kind of thing. It's about, like, all these people who... it's kind of similar themes to Game of Thrones, except Game of Thrones does have definite fantasy elements in it. It's a bunch of people who, like, all think that they should be in charge of the world for various reasons, whether it's inheritance or bloodlines or just because they want to. And at the center of it is this one guy named Dirk. And you are at times let inside Dirk's head, and sometimes you're not let inside his head for very deliberate, awesome reasons. And the entire trilogy, like, is so well woven that it must have taken years of planning to figure out all the storylines, all the crossovers, all the characters. It's phenomenal. So every so often when my wife is reading something ridiculous like this and she's like, it's good, I believe her because she recommended that trilogy for me and it was good. And she's like, is it weird that I read hardcore fantasy? And I'm like, you're looking at a guy who's read just about every Arthur C. Clarke book, even the ones that people don't read. I've read every Rama book. I've read every book in the Space Odyssey trilogy, which is actually 4 books, because that's what Arthur C. Clarke did. so sad that he's dead. I've read a ton of Asimov. I've never read Foundation, but I've read, like, the Robot series. I've read the, what's the mystery? There's, like, a mystery trilogy with the two cops. One is a real cop and one is an android. I love Philip K. Dick. I've read several Philip K. Dick books. I've read lots of his short stories. I've read H.G. Wells. Like, I'm hardcore into my sci-fi, so I stand on no safe ground that I can ridicule or make fun of my wife. But this book, man, it just looks so trashy. Click.